Oh, what are you drinking?
Kombucha,
Mucha.
nice brand called Remedy, which I just recently started buying. I used to buy the Johnny Wilkinson ones,
Oh, what
but these ones are just a bit cheaper.
what kind of drink is it?
Kombucha, so it's like fermented drink, fermented green tea, and fermented normal tea.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know
Uh,
it. I don't think I've tried it before.
yeah, it's quite nice. It's like a bit sweet, but it's actually got no sugar in, so it's the
Is it?
bacteria. You put loads of sugar in the recipe. I made it before, and the bacteria eat it all up. So then it's got no sugar in, but
Does it have?
it's
Oh,
got
so
it's got
but
sweetness
it.
though.
Oh, it does. Okay, that
That's
makes
what you were going
sense.
to ask, was it?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what I was gonna ask.
but it's only got stevia in, and it's the last ingredient.
Oh, okay.
And stevia is
Interesting.
like a more natural. Maybe I find something wrong with it, but I think it's the top of a list of artificial sweeteners for me in terms of health.
Hmm. Interesting. That's quite good. Yeah, I think there is different opinions on these sweeteners, but I don't know. And nothing
Yeah,
is good for you these days.
no, but there's certain ones like what are the common ones? Sucralose, is it? No, sucralose.
Um,
Mm,
stevia and who's the other one? That's the very common name.
yeah, the
Um,
ones that they keep calling a carcinogen, but I forget what it is.
yeah,
But yeah, stevia, I don't think it's got that connotation with it, so should be okay until they find something wrong with it.
yeah. I'm sure they will at some point. Aspartame, I think.
Oh yeah, that one sort of like I don't
The
know, sort
bad.
of feels like it's maybe a little bit worse than the other ones. Like I was
Uh,
maybe I maybe lean towards actually consuming sugar instead of that,
yeah, I
but that
mean,
might be a bit biased. But at least you know sort of what you're getting with sugar.
that's true. That's true. Um, I was gonna say, what I messaged you the other day. I don't know if you've checked at all the news about the new assisted dying bill that is coming up in the UK.
Yeah, I haven't been keeping very abreast of it, but I know it's happening, and I know it might go through. I assume it might well go through because it's a Labour government with a lot of Labour MPs, so it's not like there's going to be a ton of resistance to it.
No, but I still think that um, there will be a lot of debates. No, I mean, I don't think there is going to be a lot of time. Actually, some people are talking about the lack of time because it's meant to
Mm,
go to vote. I think at the end of this month,
right. Mm,
which doesn't give some. I was reading some of the organizations against it have been saying that they don't think it's enough time for MPs to properly read up on it and make an informed decision about
yeah.
it. So I think that's been an argument against it. But
Well, I guess whatever side of the fence you're on, it's quite a big change. So yeah, maybe there should be more time, but then I don't know. You can't just give unlimited time. Like probably most of the arguments are going to be fleshed out anyway.
I hope so. But it does seem like an interesting topic of contention for a lot of people, I think. Because I think some people
Mm.
have strong feelings for either sides about whether people should be allowed to um, to end their lives effectively if
Mm.
they choose to, when they are obviously terminal. But other people are saying that there is going to be a slippery slope, and also there's going to be pressure in many circumstances and a lot of other issues surrounding it. Have you thought
Mm.
about it at all?
Not too much because yeah, I don't know what side I particularly sit. So probably I don't feel like I've got enough of opinions, but I could maybe go through a few different aspects. We're just I guess there's the bodily autonomy, like you have your choice over what you do with your body. But then that's a new idea. It's like we think that's always been the case, except just government suppressing that. But actually, I think in maybe 500 years ago, even people were sort of seeing their body as sort of God's property. So we're, and I guess we've still got the residue of that thought, perhaps in the idea of the sanctity of life, and that people aren't. We are not God, so we can't take life. We can't decide when to end or start life. I think it was John Locke, the person who was sort of behind the philosophy of the American Revolution, or the Constitution. He was one of the first people to talk about owning property. And to own property, you first had to own your body, because that's the most direct property. So that's perhaps how we've got to a state when we can talk about ownership of our bodies, which seems like a very intuitive concept. But I don't know if that's all a good thing, like because we become more individualistic as a result.
As a result of the concept of owning our own body, you mean?
Yeah, sort of like maybe over righteous, as you imagine some sort of Americans might be with reading their rights to everyone. Like, I don't know. I feel there may be, even though it seems like a good thing, it might also backfire in some ways. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's maybe worth asking what's the value in that foreign mindset of 500 years ago, when we weren't seen to own our body. I guess we probably felt more connected, maybe less pressure on ourselves to do something, because we were sort of in God.
I was reading a little bit about it, and as you said, back at that time there was also a much more strong sense of community as well, and that is also an argument against this, that it will erode that community feeling, creating even more individualism for next generations. That, let's say, we start doing this now and becomes the de facto status quo for the future, it will erode that sense of, all of us being important and all of us being part of a community, because people will just be helped to die in the end instead of given more time with their friends and families. I don't know. I think there is a
Yeah, I
little bit
guess
of a.
that's the danger of a slippery slope. But obviously, there's lots of good arguments, and I think I'd like it for myself as an option if things got like really bad, and it was like I'm pretty sure things aren't going to get better from here. Then I probably like it as an option. But yeah, like I guess you can't just consider it as it's my choices. You consider the wider consequences of that to the whole society, to the world. And if that, like, I guess going back to like Immanuel Kant's idea, if that was universalized, would that be a good thing? So you might like it. It might be good for you, but morals should be done by, if that thing could be universalized, would that be a good thing? Well, that's only one way of thinking about it. And then the other side is a utilitarian argument of, and that's often seen as cold, but also logical. So sort of very, the greatest good for the greatest number, reducing pain and maximizing pleasure seems very good on the face of it. Makes a lot of sense. And that's probably where a lot of the people in support of assisted dying are, knowingly or unknowingly, on the philosophical spectrum. They're more utilitarian about it there, but not so much considering life in general principles. They're considering just pleasure versus pain and greatest number of people.
But if you think about it from a religious perspective, both of our countries are Christian. In the Christian religion, the idea of suffering is very prominent and very important for the final, for someone's development and spiritual journey, and even salvation in the end, you could argue. So
Yeah.
would it mean that taking this road would mean that we're artificially removing that final element of suffering for people that are obviously dying, but cutting that journey short, because maybe we are meant to suffer until we pass on? Just playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, I think suffering could be important. And in a way, if you are a theist, when you sort of assume that suffering must be kind of important, because otherwise, if there is a good God, then he wouldn't be putting us through this life, which has suffering inherent in it. At some point or another, you're going to come across probably massive suffering. You're going to see your parents die, and you're going to age and die yourself. So there seems to be some value in suffering if you are a theist. And then if you're an atheist, I guess the other side of that is that if what's the point of that suffering as you're going into death if there's no thing afterwards, no state that you can say you have the suffering so you can learn from it or you're somehow better after it. But if there's no after, then is there any point in that suffering? And I guess atheists would think not, but I don't know. Maybe there is a point of suffering. Maybe you can make a case for suffering even if there's no afterwards. Maybe because it can teach you, and it doesn't teach everyone, but it can teach you to. It forces you almost to have to step back and sort of step back from your direct emotions and
Mm.
observe them. So you become sort of the observer, which is the classic, the crux of a lot of these spiritual teachings is to become the observer, the mirror mind, so the consciousness, which takes into account the good and the bad, but it's behind good and bad, and like our judgments are good and bad. It's the mirror which receives our images, and we then judge them as good or bad.
Hmm. I
So,
agree. I
so,
think, as you
so it could
said,
teach us, like,
exactly
and
as you said.
people would argue, some spiritual teachers probably argue, even like a minute of having that removed state of consciousness is worth something. Maybe they call it eternal. I'm not sure I really get it, but like they call that some you're sort of stepping outside of space and time. So even if it's only a minute and then you've got loads of suffering either side of it, still somehow valuable. But I don't know. That's something I'm not fully got. So
Hmm. I definitely think there could be some value thinking about it from a philosophical perspective, at least, to going through all the stages until the end. As long as you're comfortable and also giving your loved ones some more chance to spend time with you. But at the same time, in practice, it's not it's not a good experience, I think. At least.
yeah, it's certainly a tough
And that's an
experience.
understatement.
Mm,
Yeah. Um but at the same time, as you said, it could be seen as a spiritual test even without the prospect of, an afterlife and internal salvation and all that. As you said, there is some value intrinsically into being able to, as you said, detach yourself
mm,
and gain maybe some spiritual salvation in the end for yourself, even if
yeah,
it's outside of the scope of religion as such.
yeah, and also just the idea of death maybe can influence our lives even when we're not close to death. It can. I guess the idea of death puts life in perspective, and if we think about death, and it can be useful in that way. But then, yeah, whether the suffering bit at the end, whether that's important to that, I'm not sure. But yeah, suffering certainly. But I think there are opportunities in suffering, but obviously it's hard to take it sometimes when it's happening to you. Um, well, yeah, don't know.
Hmm.
It's a tricky
I
one.
thought
Like
this.
I sort of see like I can sort of imagine the extreme version of with if euthanasia goes through and then it goes very like mainstream, so like a big industry, and then sort of like at the end of life, it's just sort of assumes like once you reach like age 80, then you just check out and give your money to the next generation. That sounds like feels like very clinical and um, very Brave New World ish, and just like a utopian dystopia, if if it just seems something which maybe because you're sort of judging it as unnatural, then that's a problem with my judgments. But it does sort of seem to feel something unnatural and perhaps not. It's going to have ramifications somewhere, even if we can't directly see them. Whereas
What
if
I
it's just a
was
few people,
actually
it's
also
okay. Like if it's just a few people dying, sorry, it's just a few people choosing euthanasia, like because they got really extreme circumstances, that's okay. And then it's just for if it became a slippery slope, which I think is an argument. It's not necessarily the best argument, but it is an argument. You were saying,
yeah, I was actually reading about the countries that have had um, legalized euthanasia, such as the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, and even in Oregon in the United States, for example. And it does show that once it has become legal, yes, there is an increase in assisting dying cases, but there is no correlation supposedly between that and decreased palliative care, for example, or increase in um, practices that aren't complying with the laws, such as, expanding it in cases where it shouldn't be done, for example. There seems to be, in every case that it has been implemented, there seems to be quite a lot of safeguards, and it's not. And even though public support seems to also increase with it becoming
interesting.
legalized in its case, which is also interesting, there doesn't seem to be as many issues as one would expect, or decrease in the quality of care people receive before death either, which I
Yeah,
also
that,
found
that kind
interesting.
of makes sense to me. I could imagine why that would be. Yeah, to play devil's advocate on a little bit, you mentioned there, you say there's been no efforts to expand it outside of the law, but maybe the law itself has expanded to allow more people to die. I feel like maybe I read something about Canada. Is Canada assisted dying? I'm really not up with this. So, like, did they expand their law? They did it, and then they expanded the laws further. I don't know.
I think in some of the cases there has been extensions to non-terminal conditions, which has
Yeah,
certainly
I've heard talk
sparked
about mental
outrage.
health, like extreme mental
Yes,
health, which is an interesting one because that's quite different in some ways.
yes, I think this has also happened in some of these countries as well, from what I was reading. But I think there's still a lot of scrutiny around the final choice of someone going through with it. How much scrutiny, obviously that's up for debate again. But that's just some interesting observations. But I just think that even just talking about it, it's it's good enough, because I don't think people talk about it even. It's almost something that is death is very much a taboo in our culture. No one talks about it. No one wants to know anything about it. No one wants to expand
Yeah,
their
it's hidden
knowledge
behind the curtain.
in relation to it.
Yeah,
It's all behind closed doors in palliative care facilities, and until you're personally affected by it, you don't really know much about it, I think.
yeah, and I always like that scene in Brave New World. No, not Brave New World. Aldous Huxley's other book, Island, where the main character is like just a typical English guy from the 1950s, and he's comes to this native island. It's quite an advanced island, but it's like I think it's in the like Polynesia, that sort of area. So it's like a tropical island, and it's a attempt at a utopia based on a lot of Buddhist principles. And the girl, he meets a young girl there, and she's very surprised that the main character has not experienced or ever seen someone die or give birth. So I think that's very typical of our culture, which
Hmm.
I think there is some perhaps value in being exposed to the harsh realities of life, or at least seeing the bookends of life. And I think it puts life literally in perspective to see where life comes from and where it goes.
Hmm. I just think there is a lot of other cultures where death of a community member, for example, is not experienced by just their immediate family. There is tribes where when a member of the tribe dies, they all gather up and they all um, participate in various um, rituals surrounding
Mm.
the passing of that member. So,
Yeah,
and I
in
think
Asia, somewhere in Asia,
we're so
there's
far
the
from that that we're in the
group of people
completely
who
opposite end of the
raise
spectrum
the
there.
dead every year or few years. So they literally take them out of their coffins or wherever they're stored, and just sort of do a festival with the dead bodies, which might be taking it to too much of an extreme. But I think to judge it as just bad, I think we're doing a disservice to ourselves. I think there must be some sort of psychological value in doing that. I don't think it's just madness. I think maybe I don't know. I don't know what the value exactly is in there, but I expect there's something there.
Mm. Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think if I knew that there is this definitive prospect of a gruesome, painful, horrible death
Mm.
um, coming up, there's a lot of forms of cancer or other various terminal diseases that will certainly give you a very horrible few months of life. I think it's all well and good talking about it philosophically, but I think in practice, I would also like to have the option of being able to end it if that was the case.
Yeah,
Um,
I do tend to agree with you. I think it would be nice to have at least the option, and maybe having the option makes it feel less scary. So maybe you could go through a bit of a suffering and think, if it gets super bad, then I'll check out early. But otherwise, I'm just going to see how far I can go into it and see if there's something in the suffering which maybe teaches me, or because I guess suffering sort of pushes you to some sort of more spiritual place, or can do, because it's out of a state of desperation and realizing that nothing in the world is going to mean anything to you, or can transform you in any way. It's you have to um, either direct that at God, or just pure like see what's behind the pain and just sort of do it in a more logical way. So whichever way you do it, suffering can sort of give you something, but probably most people don't take that. But I don't know, it's valuable, I think, for the people who do. Like you hear a lot of people
yeah.
saying that their suffering was a transformative moment for them, and that they wouldn't
Mm.
wish it on anyone, but it was um, they would do it. They might not even do it again, but they know it was really valuable. They're glad they went through it.
Mm. But I think, as you said, when we talk about suffering, there's a lot of different versions of suffering. I think there is physical pain, there is um, psychological pain, but there's also being bedridden in a completely undignified state where you need to be taken care of by nurses all day long. I just don't think if you're in that state,
Mm.
you'd feel like the suffering would be worth it because it's
It's
just so undignified.
Yeah, maybe it's not so much for suffering. I'm just something's coming to me of there's a spiritual teacher called Ram Dass who talks about he helped people die, like he was a palliative carer effectively, um, and I think he talked about near the end of people's lives, maybe a few minutes before, maybe a few hours, a few days before, when people know they're like going to die, or they know they're helpless because they can't do anything for themselves, then all the persona drops off. So all the persona we've been carrying around for our whole life, the heavy mask of persona drops off, and
Mm.
so the palliative carer or anyone around the family can have maybe a more direct, true relationship with that person, because no longer is your father someone who is maybe seen as like an authority figure, but he's now you're caring for him, and maybe to cut those moments off too short, maybe you would get this even if you were going to euthanize yourself in a few days, and you would like, I know my end date is in 3 days, so let's spend some time together and have a, like, maybe talk about those things which we never talked about, and have that true relationship. But I don't know I don't know how euthanasia would change that. It might change it, it might not.
Hmm. Well, in the cases of the countries I mentioned, they still the data shows that they still invest a lot in palliative care as well. So there is no indication that assisted dying has shrunk the investment or quality of palliative care in these cases. So I suppose it's still there for people that want to
Hmm. I I guess the
have.
devil's advocate of that is that it's probably more the more left wing countries that have legalized it, and so they're more likely to be very caring to people anyway. Whereas the danger is if it becomes normalized, like enough left wing countries legalize it, and then it becomes sort of so normalized that the, like, people places like, I don't know, I guess China, other places legalize it, and they're just like treat it as more of like a commercial. As let's just get rid of it, the generation. Once everyone reaches, say, it's a bit like one child policy, for instance. Once everyone reaches 80, or even maybe 65, they're not useful to the workforce anymore. Let's just cull them.
Yeah, that is a nightmare scenario. But on
Uh,
the flip side, if you think about, as a playing the devil's advocate on the argument of, as you mentioned, your persona drops and you get the chance to be with your loved ones. In many cases,
hmm.
people have no loved ones around,
Yeah, well,
no
that's a
families.
huge problem, which is, yeah, needs to. I don't know how it's solved, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. But
Mm.
yeah,
For
that's
various
something which,
reasons.
hmm,
Exactly.
yeah, that's something worthy of discussion and society's focus. But it doesn't seem to get very much because it's, well, not only is death scary, but it's also inconvenient, like for people working, and
Yeah.
you can understand it. The culture sort of creates that attitude of needing to work, being so desperate, always on the treadmill. But
Back to the individualism.
yeah, it all goes together, I think. So yeah, I think ultimately you have to solve the more crux of the issue. So I guess society needs to have a midlife crisis, which might not go well, but
Yeah, I don't know
needs to
how
happen
well that would
nonetheless.
go
Yeah,
for our
I think that
social.
think we are having a bit of a midlife crisis because there's a lot of people questioning whether the incentives that we're given, and like even young people can't even, the incentives aren't even there anymore. Like buying a house at a certain time for a lot of
Mm.
people, it's unrealistic. So it's not even like the promises of capitalism are there. And also we see like the problems with communism. So it's like we're not, all these reallocation of resources and chasing resources don't seem to work. So it's about, maybe the last century has sort of made us realize that there must be something beyond that.
I think it's also that people with social media, everyone can see now that everyone else has also very similar thoughts than with them. So
Mm.
the people that are feeling that are on the treadmill post about it, then people watch those videos and they are like, "Oh, I feel exactly the same." In today's society, I think it's the visibility of it as well, that people that are young, or everyone for that matter,
Mm.
that is using social media, they see other people expressing their feelings on a daily basis in different ways, in different videos and media, and they feel exactly the same. So I think that has made it a lot more visible, because in the past I don't think people would have this kind of exposure as much to other people's feelings, if that makes sense. So broadcast it
Interesting.
out.
Yeah, it's sort of like make it more acceptable to feel how we're really feeling.
Yeah, in a way. Because everyone, I think, I don't think that people, 100 years ago felt any different when they had to go to, you know, do hard manual labor
Mm.
and thought, yeah, this is the life. This is what I want to be doing all day, breaking my back. But I
Yeah.
don't think they had anyone. posting videos on TikTok about how horrible it is to be breaking your back every day, like now, for example.
Yeah, and I guess with that comes a sort of more entitlement, or there does seem to be more of a culture, for better or worse, of thinking rather than being sort of not necessarily content with your coal mining job or whatever, but now with whatever job you've got, you're wanting the best. You're wanting to be some influencer or some music star or some, I don't know, like entrepreneur. So maybe that's also not helpful as well. Like at least in the past you were sort of content, but maybe that contentness was also not good. Um, I'm not sure how quite it works out because we do need people to work. Well, at least for now. Maybe AI will change that, but and I think work is good for if you do it in the right way. If it's not soul draining work, if it's not burning the candle at two ends, I think work can be good, even manual work, like because it uses the body, and we're quite disembodied in our culture. So yeah, as long as it's not inhumane, I think we could find a way that people that work would actually be help us and help society and help everything. But we probably haven't got the balance at the moment.
No, I think, as you said, it has to do with feeling fulfilled somehow. And I think it's very hard to feel fulfilled when you know the job that you do doesn't matter, when you know that you'll be replaced in an instant, and everything you do is pointless in a way in terms of your everyday actions. So I think that for a lot of people created this kind of dissonance inside them.
Mm.
But at the same time, I don't know what's the solution for that, because obviously, as you said, we need people to do the jobs, and otherwise we wouldn't have a society.
Yeah, yeah. I think we a lot of people think of a job now as something to give me fulfillment, to give you fulfillment, but not to see it as a service to society. And I feel like perhaps you're not really going to feel fulfillment in your job unless you feel some element of service to something bigger than you, because there is the very definition of meaning requires an individual to act and also something beyond them of value to act upon. And therefore, we need something like even helping one person at the supermarket or helping a lot of people as a nurse or whatever. I think you need that element of service in your life, and even in an AI dominated economy, we will need that if we're going to be fulfilled.
Hmm. On that note, I have you heard about the concept of ikigai? I'm not sure if I'm
Yes.
pronouncing it right. The
What's
Japanese concept.
yeah? What's is it trifecta? No, four different elements of what makes up a good
Yes.
life. Four Venn diagrams of yeah, something that makes
Yes.
money, something that serves others, something you're good at, and then I forget the fourth one.
Yes, it's what you love, what the world needs, what you can be
Mm.
paid for, and what you're good at.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking
I love
at
that
what to do.
concept.
Yeah, not always as straightforward as it sounds, but yeah, I think
No, I think
it
it
can sort of
requires a
help
lot of
direct.
soul searching. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, but I really like that concept, because I think it could help a lot of people. And obviously, it's not easy, especially today, to find, you know, even finding what you're good at is hard these days. But I just
yeah.
think if people understand themselves first, it could solve a lot of issues for them.
Yeah, so it's certainly self-awareness, and there's a good book called Managing Oneself, a very short book, which sort of talks about different things, which sort of prompts you to think about different what are you good at? Do you like working in a team? Do you like working on your own? Are you a good leader or are you not? And then just asking yourself these general questions and looking back on your life, then you can sort of get an idea of what you're good at, what you enjoy, and sort of start narrowing down what might be sort of good career options to explore. Not necessarily to go into straight away, but to sort of see if you can flourish in that direction.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
ikigai simply translates, I think, as reason for being. I've just checked that. So reason for being. So it's maybe a bit more. I don't know if in Japan they separate out all the four different boxes. They might do, but I think perhaps it's a more simple concept. It's just a reason for being.
which is what people need, really, isn't it? What we
Yeah,
all need.
yeah. I think that's probably what most people are ultimately looking for. So we're not looking for necessarily a Garden of Eden style paradise of just free time all the time. I think that would get boring for most people quite quickly. We're not looking like for an eternal cruise ship, just sailing across the ocean, being on a lounge all day. I think we probably get bored quite quickly, or at least we wouldn't feel there's much point in this life. But then I guess you can also feel there's too much meaning in life, where you need to do something, and then you're always stressed about something.
Yeah, it has to be a balance on
Mm.
how people live. As you said, people are very stressed these days, and I think this is the root of a lot of people's problems. If you're
Mm.
stressed and you're always in that elevated state of stress, um, it can really burn you out, and I think that's what happens for most people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it'd be interesting to do some. I don't know if any psychological studies are being done, but whether people are more likely to get burnt out if they don't see their job as meaningful. Like, for instance, if you're maybe a teacher, are you able to? Surely teachers do experience burnout, but maybe you're less likely to experience burnout with the same amount of work as someone who's doing something which doesn't. You don't feel like you're serving anyone beyond yourself.
Now that you mentioned teachers, I'm sure that I was reading somewhere, don't quote me on this, that teachers have some of the highest levels of job
Yeah, I
satisfaction in the world.
dissatisfaction, mate. Yeah, well,
No,
I
not
don't know.
dissatisfaction, satisfaction. Some
Satisfaction,
of the
yeah,
highest,
yeah. No,
yeah.
I keep hearing that because I'm considering going into teaching, and people keep telling me that it's tiring, but it's fulfilling, even
Yes.
with all the extra paperwork and everything else which gets shoved in, and way too much responsibility perhaps for one person. They still find it fulfilling, which is interesting. And you don't hear that from that many people, like in other professions.
Yeah, you said you'd be interested in going into teaching.
Mm.
Have you um, thought you've always wanted to go into teaching, or has it been more of a recent?
It's definitely come to the
Um,
fore more recently, but I think for a while I thought teaching would be cool. I've done teaching when I was a teenager and a bit afterwards with sailing, but obviously that was just on a few courses every week, so just a few week-long courses, and that was good fun. Like tiring, but I don't know, there is something. I think it does tend to bring the best out of you. Well, for
mm,
me, I found that was the profession that brought something out of me, which I think deep down I knew I wanted to bring out, which my other pursuits perhaps hadn't brought out. So yeah, and yeah, so more recently I had like in the summer I had some sort of a dream which I'm struggling to remember exactly what happened. It was like a little snapshot in a dream, but I think it was an older guy coming up to me saying, "You were a great teacher when you were younger."
mm.
Um, or yeah, when you were younger, I think, or something like that. I don't know. Um, and then he sort of like pointed to the, or like there's some sort of some movement around the heart area. I really very sketchy on the details of
In
what
your
happened there.
soul.
Yeah, so I think it was quite easy to interpret that as like some dreams are very hard to interpret and you can read too much in. But I think there was, it was some sort of reminder from your subconscious that you're supposed to, you might do well in teaching. You might find some fulfillment there, and that's the heart. And then saying you were a great teacher when you were younger. That's, I don't know if there's anything in that because I think it was almost like looking back on my life from that perspective. Look,
Mhm.
so I don't know if dreams sort of can tell the future, but I think that was an interesting sort of perspective on time, and yeah, how like perhaps we've got a certain life that we have a potential to live, and we might not always meet that if we don't, if we're always rushing and not paying attention to our deeper sense of what we want to do, even if it doesn't earn enough money.
My father used to believe that dreams are sometimes portals to previous lives that we've lived.
Hmm.
So maybe your dream was pointing out to you being a teacher in a previous life of yours. That's why I mentioned that.
Maybe. I mean, a lot of people do believe in previous lives. I can't say I have any evidence of previous lives, so I don't subscribe to that view. But I sort of think of dreams as more like all the characters in the dream, even the ones
Mm.
you don't think are you. They're just not your conscious, the ego you, but they
Different
are,
versions of you.
yeah, different versions of you. They're like maybe elements of your shadow that you maybe have pushed away. That's the only chance they get of a voice. And then, like, so for instance, if you dream of a thief and you're maybe trying to stop the thief, then you, if you look at it, if you change your mindset on that and sort of think, oh, the thief is also you some way, it's a part of you, um, and so that what was usually concealed by judgment, we sort of judge the thief as bad, us as good, but then that judgment goes away, and it's like it makes you think, inquire more, be more curious, and sort of open-minded to think, okay, that whatever you see as bad in the dream or negative, what's that trying to tell you? Because that's ultimately a call to wholeness. If you can integrate what's in the darkness, then because the darkness is just what we don't know. It's not necessarily bad. It's just what we judge as bad. But there's usually some sort of energy or whatever word you want to put on it. There's something valuable in being curious about what we're scared of usually. Um, so yeah, to asking what the thief represents or what the thief wants to say. Maybe you're too much of a goody two shoes, and he's like saying, "Come on, just loosen up a bit and have
Is
some
your
fun."
bad side trying to come out?
Yeah, yeah, but to call him the bad side is perhaps to judge him. So it's and I think if you're less judgmental of people in your dream world, if you realize they're all you, then you can sort of come out into the real world and you see that there's people you don't like and people you do like, but both can sort of teach you.
Hmm.
Both are important, and both are reflections of what you're projecting out into the world.
As you said, that is very interesting, I think, to sometimes take stock of your dreams and kind of analyze, because
Mm.
obviously there is dreams that are obviously born of stress or born of our everyday, struggles that our brain is just trying to kind of package in a way and kind of put them to one side while we're asleep
Mm.
and digest sometimes. But I think you can also understand things about yourself, as you said, through your dreams, and sometimes it's worth analyzing.
Yeah, I think people either see them as like, oh, that's too woo woo, or it's just a dream, like it's no reality to it. But like if there was no use in it, then we wouldn't have dreams.
And sometimes
So
I think your mind is trying to tell you something.
yeah, yeah, like it's the only opportunity for that side of your mind, of those elements of your mind, to come through and get, and when there's no noise and there's none of the rushing and over intellectualization, then you can listen to something which is yeah, that's even more you than all that. And yeah, that's, I think, like death in modern culture, dreams have also been very much expunged. Like we often still dream, but we just, as soon as we wake up, we forget them. We don't see any value in them. So we're, even though we spend a lot of time doing it, we're just very separated from that side of ourselves. So we're not connected with the ourselves of the nighttime.
That's the problem I have half the times. I most times cannot remember my dreams. And even when I
Mm.
do remember them, I remember them while I've just woken up. And
Yeah,
as
you
soon
have
as I
to.
get off the bed, it's
Yeah,
gone.
some people say if you even turn over, then the blood somehow
Yeah,
comes from one side and then it messes up the dreams.
it's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
leaks out
Yeah,
of
but
my
I
brain.
do think the general principle is correct. Yeah, it leaks out.
Hmm.
But the general principle I think is correct that you have to do it immediately. Like maybe you'll occasionally get a whisper of something, a memory of what happened in the dream because you get prompted by something in your life which happens an hour after you've woken up. But generally, if you want to become aware of your dreams, you have to get quite good at noting them down straight away, which uh, can be difficult because you're in like a groggy state and you're like, oh, was that really that important? But it's interesting. I think I don't note down all my dreams, but I note down maybe like 3 a week. And
Really? That's really
it,
impressive.
well, yeah, it's just the ones which I feel like are significant, or the ones which are not necessarily. I don't necessarily feel significant, but I feel like I've remembered to note them down, so I'll note them down. So it's and even the ones that I don't feel are significant, but I for some reason I decide to note them down, or for some reason I've remembered that one rather than the other ones. But even the ones which don't seem significant often have a little bit of meaning in them, especially when you analyze them. And you can, if you're worried about over analyzing and sort of being just like a palm reader and getting into that sort of woo land, just if you upload them to there's an app called Oniri which has an AI analysis, so you can actually just get ChatGPT to do it if you don't mind ChatGPT being privy to
Mm.
all your dreams. But yeah, so you can get that sort of very logical analysis, which is actually like all you really need is and ChatGPT and large language models are working on word associations, so you can sort of see what like maybe if you dream of water or dark water, then it can get quite an accurate summation of what that might mean based on lots and lots of other people dreaming or writing about that metaphor for whatever it's a metaphor for. So it's a more accurate perhaps interpretation than what we worry that some people would be going around interpreting dreams and sort of just like seeing like don't know, like a beetle as some going to a dream dictionary and looking at what does a beetle mean. I
Mm.
think yes, so ChatGPT could be more objective about that, or another AI analysis, or also you yourself. There's a mistake of going to dream dictionaries perhaps because you yourself sort of maybe subconsciously know what that means. So if you actually inquire a few times or you ask your deeper self, well, what does that mean to me? And then often it's a very practical thing. It's a very down to earth thing. So even though dreams are sort of like seem as mystical, they're often pointing you back down to earth.
Hmm. I definitely think, as you said, that they very often point you towards something that your mind is trying to kind of tell you. But as you
Mm.
said, it's it's very interesting. I hadn't thought of that idea about using ChatGPT or any other large language model to kind of interpret them. That's a really good idea. I'll
Yeah,
probably
it's
try
quite a
that
simple
next
way
time I
because
have a
it's quite
dream.
addictive in a way because you upload a dream, you think, oh, this hasn't got that much interest in, and then you upload it, it's like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, that does make sense, and that resonates with me.
Hmm.
So it's like quite a fun
So,
sort of spiritual activity, but it's just quite a fun activity, a very real activity, and sort of
hmm.
when something resonates with you, it's like you don't need outside proof. It's just like, oh yeah, of course, that means something to me, and dreams are telling you stuff about you and stuff that you should do.
Yeah, for sure. I wish I just remembered them in my case
Yeah, I
because
think some people say it's very hard to remember, and I think yeah, like if I don't I think you just have to sort of just slowly get in the habit of, if I can, I'm going to record them, even if I'm feeling a bit groggy. I'm going to, and I only record like 3 a week, and I'm still in that mindset of trying to. But yeah, so and maybe just treat it maybe as a bit fun, sort of like if you can capture a dream and you've captured a part of your subconscious, your maybe your shadow, maybe the stuff that you are wanting to suppress in everyday life or has been suppressed by society, and you're able to integrate something quite easily through taking in the dream. So you're marrying, but you're connecting your ego self with the rest of yourself and becoming more whole.
I know the people that want to experience their dreams more, they say you should try and lucid dream instead of waiting to
I have tried.
dream normally. Have you?
Yeah, but I get too excited, and so when I rarely do get into a lucid dream, I'm like, oh, look at all these things I could do, and then but I think, oh no, I'm going to wake up because I got too excited, and then I do wake up. So yeah, like I
Really? So,
think,
but you've managed to get in there.
yeah, the longest lucid dream I had about is 30 seconds, I reckon, maybe a minute. But I've had a
Did it
few.
feel longer than a minute though?
No, no,
No,
unfortunately.
because I've heard of people saying that very often when they're dreaming or even lucid dreaming, there's some kind of the time dilation effect.
Yeah,
So I don't
I can
know
imagine that.
if um, that's why I asked if it felt longer. But did
Yeah,
it take you a lot of practice to get into the like to achieve that kind of
yeah. Well, I didn't do it
30
that
seconds, 1 minute?
often, so yeah, like I think you almost, unless you're naturally doing lucid dream, I think you do need to sort of have some awareness or desire to do it, and you need to think about it enough times in waking consciousness to be able to do it at night. But I didn't do too many of these exercises, like when people like put a finger through their hand, see if it goes through, to check if now whether you are dreaming. And therefore, if you do that enough times in the day, theoretically, then you'll do that at night when you actually are dreaming, and then you'll be able to do it. I think that's probably like Inception and the like spinning top. Is that? I think it's been too long since I watched Inception, but yeah, I think
Yeah, like when you
that's
can
all
see
about
the
that.
yeah, when they had the spinning top not stopping spinning, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah. So I think that's the same sort of principle.
interesting.
But
That's
I
quite
think,
good.
yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I think maybe if you go to sleep also, sort of thinking,
Thinking about it.
I want to lucid dream, or I want to be aware of my dreams or come alive in my dreams. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a while since I've actually lucid dreamed, so I'm very sketchy on what I used. But I don't think I was super religious about it. But I think you have to be quite focused on it, and it can take almost like, I think it's not great because it reduces your quality of sleep because you're always thinking about it. So yeah, I don't know. It'd be cool to do it again, but at this stage of my life, I'm not too bothered. I think in a way, you can get a lot out of dreams if you remember them, and that's a more natural, easy way to integrate that. Just
Mm.
by, you see the story and then it resonates with you. So it's like a natural teaching rather than, yeah. No, lucid dreams are also very directed. So well, they can be, but you are the one directing it. So yeah,
Also, it's not, as you said, something that comes from inside you as such as.
yeah. Although there can be relationships, I've heard of people saying, "Oh, they met some figure which represented their shadow or their fears, and they decided because they were lucid that they would go up to that figure and embrace their fears." And that even if your fears in a dream don't come as a figure, if you're a lucid dreamer, you could potentially say, tell your dream, can you bring my fears together in a person that I can hug, so that you can then just embrace your fears literally, and that sort of metaphorical embrace actually, I guess, somehow subconsciously helps you embrace fears in their real state.
Mhm. I'd be curious to know if um, there's more studies that are more recent that have been done um, in different groups of people, such as people that are more religious, for example, or people that are more spiritual, or people that
Mm.
are non-religious, to see if there is differences on how people dream based on these kind of
Mm.
um, social or cultural aspects of their life.
Yeah, it'd
So
be
I
interesting
wonder
to know how much, for a Christian, say how much God or how much the Virgin Mary or how much Jesus like
exactly,
shows up, and how do they show up? Yeah, that would
exactly that.
be interesting.
And if
Or
it's
maybe,
like, yeah,
or maybe they show up less than we'd assume, because even though we're thinking about them in everyday waking consciousness, in the night it's more of the dreaming is more of a natural exercise to sort of integrate your subconscious, and that's done through characters which have perhaps come through evolution if you're of that mind, but we've built up these archetypal characters that our brain used to plug into stories that resonate with us, and therefore those characters are not necessarily the typical religious characters we'd maybe worship, but they are nonetheless important just from a psychological wholeness point of view.
I'd be
It'd
very
be
curious to
interesting to
know.
yeah, it'd be interesting to
To
talk to a Christian lucid dreamer. I think that would be
exactly,
a good
exactly
podcast
that.
guest, which might not be very common because I don't expect there's too many of that, or I don't think Christianity specifically says you should not lucid dream, but because lucid dream is basically just an awareness of your dreams. So uh, in a way, that's just it's not like if you could say all dreams bad, but Christianity can't really say all dreams are bad because everyone dreams. So that would be guilt tripping everyone. Which so but the lucid dreaming, at least you can step back, and so you're actually aware when you're dreaming, so you're not getting taken control of. So I guess it's not necessarily a practice that Christianity would disagree with, but it's probably not one which is actively encouraged, just like a spiritual practice, where it would be perhaps in some spiritual circles or maybe other indigenous cultures.
Hmm. Very interesting topic, I think.
Yeah,
Today we've
I
had
like dreaming.
yeah, I'm fascinated by the concept and how, our brain, creates this kind of such a
Mm.
vivid experience that is almost as if you've lived it,
Yeah,
but
and
it's
you
just
sort of
coming
really
from your
believe it at the
mind.
time.
Exactly.
Like I'm not one who necessarily believes dreams are real, but I just think it's fascinating and undeniable if you look at your dreams how creative the brain is, and whether it's your brain or
Precisely.
whether that's the collective human brain which you have access to. I don't know, but it's I think we a lot of us are living very mundane lives, and a very easy way to sort of introduce a bit of a more spiritual, or not necessarily, you don't have to use those words, but just more interesting, more creative, that you can sort of see, just check into your dreams and see, then you start noticing things like, then you see how creative your brain really is. And like, for instance, a few weeks ago, I dreamt of someone. um, I work sometimes doing care for people, like like doing their toilet care and rolling them and all that stuff. So there was that person, and so I work with disabled people, and the disabled person in the dream, his disability was he was growing too big, so he was
Oh.
growing so big that he reached the ceiling and then started keeling over, and that arch was something I'd seen the day before, like literally a few hours before, of the Egyptian god. I think it's Nut or Nun, of a goddess, and she's represented in this picture as like an arch, like a
Oh, very
yeah,
interesting.
so that was like too much of a coincidence, I think, to have not been influenced by
Hmm.
that. But it's just amazing how the mind subconsciously takes that image that's maybe a bit weird, a bit unconventional, and it sort of like thinks, oh, okay, well, we could put that into a dream which is very practical and very like quite different really to the original meaning of that image. But let's just use it. So it's quite fascinating how you're like naturally creative, and it's sort of like quite a relief that it's not like your ego has to create stuff in life. It's we're like quite naturally creative in dreams, and we just need to find avenues for that to come out in real life, in art, in conversation, or in work.
And it has happened. There's so many cases where people's dreams have really changed people's lives. And I do wonder if
Mm.
anyone who might be watching has had this kind of similar experience where they had a dream that has changed the course of their lives. Like you've just were
Yeah, with the
talking earlier
teaching.
about having
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And so already that's changed what I've done, because I've changed my hours in my teaching, my job, which was more care work. Now it's more teaching assistant work with a bit of care on the side. So I'm doing more of that. I've volunteered for Cub Scouts, working with younger kids, because there also in that dream was some sort of element, I'm not sure of, like an 8-year-old, so around that age, or I think I was 8-year-old, something like that. So it's sort of, I felt like that's my dreams telling me that's the age that I should be sort of teaching. So yeah, so I've volunteered for Cub Scouts. I've started paddle tennis coaching for 7 to 9 year olds. So yeah, like very practical sort of. I don't know exactly why my dream's telling me this, but I'm just going to follow it because, and it feels quite liberating to sort of follow something rather than to have to plan your life and sort of think, oh, what's the best thing I can do with my life? Let's just actually trust the dreams. So follow the life of your dreams, but literally following the life of your dreams.
It's true. I mean, hadn't J.K. Rowling written Harry Potter based on a dream? I
I
think
haven't heard that. Interesting. I can believe it.
I'm fairly certain that this is the
There's
case.
a lot of stories of songs being written. I think Paul McCartney wrote a song based on the dream. I'm sure lots of other people have. And there's it's like the vacuum cleaner or something like that. Some piece of hardware was created by someone who supposedly had a dream.
Yeah, apparently J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, had a dream that she was both Harry Potter and the narrator while writing the final book in the series.
Oh, a final book. So it wasn't like a. It didn't inspire the
Um,
series, but it's interesting. Yeah,
I mean,
nonetheless.
no, apparently that is a different version actually. Saying further down, it says that maybe as you said, no, maybe as you said, it has to do with the final book. But I was reading something related to her dreaming part of the story, or um,
Yeah, and you can certainly dream up a lot of ideas. Like I come out with ideas for different things through my dreams. Some of them are just you wonder like what you were on then, like how crazy that was. But I think if you just note down enough, then there will be something, an idea which you think, oh, okay, that does make sense. So it's not like a classic artist of actually creating lots, and then you can discard then perhaps 90%, which is rubbish, and keeping the 10%. But if you don't go for the mass approach and you're always focusing on perfection, then or just you're thinking all this work is rubbish, then you'll never get to that 10%, which is perhaps actually valuable.
yeah, um, very interesting. I think that's a very interesting topic when you have a lot of people that are also keen to understand more about their dreams and the
Mm.
connections of their dreams and their desires, or um, other things that are happening in their lives. So I'm curious to know more as well about what other people think about this kind of topic. But I definitely think it links into a lot of other spiritual topics that we usually discuss as well.
Yeah, I guess it's an altered state of consciousness, so there's that link. But I kind of like dreams as because they feel like a natural way of achieving it. It's like it's not a forced, which maybe it's fine to initiate certain different changes of consciousness through meditation or um, active imagination or psychedelic experience. But this is just naturally comes to us, and it's something that we all share. So it's not like something that can be stigmatized. It's just waiting for us to explore.
I think that's the best part about it, that dreams allow you to explore both your own mental state through your dreams, but also discover new meanings and new ideas that you might have through them.
Yeah, I think if you're struggling with the meaning of life, then and you're looking for like a logical meaning, you might actually find some sort of meaning comes through in dreams, even if you don't quite understand it. So it might be something like vague, sort of saying, "Oh, you'd probably be good as a teacher." Like you have no idea why, but you're like, "Okay, you're probably your dreams telling you you're probably good at that." So give that a go. See like what's in there, what's in there for you, or what brings out something in you. Um, yeah, it's like a simple way that you could actually just experiment for like a week or a month or whatever, saying I'm going to try and record like maybe 3 dreams a week, and I'm going to see what keeps coming up, and I'm going to action some of that, see actually what are the results of that in real life, and kind of a cool experiment, I guess, to sort of see how your dreams can impact your real life in perhaps interesting ways and meaningful ways.
Mhm. Again, I think we had a very interesting conversation with our going nowhere.
Yeah, we got
Um,
from where did we get from euthanasia to dreams. I think we were quite
exactly.
focused on two subjects, but I guess we probably went round the houses a little bit. So yeah, it's all good. I think it's all good fun. But yeah, it would be cool to interview someone who was perhaps more in the dream space, has more knowledge about that, because I think that would be an interesting person to pick their brains.
Mm, I definitely agree as well. So maybe something to keep in mind for our next installment of Going Nowhere
Yeah,
podcast. And I think for today, because I think we're running out of time a little bit, I think we can wrap it up and we can go nowhere again next time.